Conditions of Life 2. The Predicted End of Will by Paco Aramburu. I admit to counting 5.5 good-looking women between downtown and the Fullerton stop. It's a male thing, I tell myself. Yet beauty is not the only thing that attracts me to people. An otherwise normal woman sat in a single seat and read as if she was entranced in the interpretation of a concert, channeling her emotions through her brown eyes as she scanned the pages of an old book with fast, acquisitive jerks. After I stared at her for long intervals, I realized, with distaste, that what I felt was a form of jealousy, that I craved to be in the rapture of an unraveling story imagined so fetchingly. The jostling of the train prevented me from seeing the title of an obviously fascinating book. I couldn't bring myself to interrupt such a special moment to ask my question. As the L train approached the western station, opportunity presented itself when she closed the book with a snap. She stood up. Her eyes, a moment ago so intense, were now retiring. She tottered towards the door. I asked what she was reading. When she turned to me, I noticed tears welling in her eyes. Her mind was obviously somewhere else. That's why I was surprised when she took a piece of paper from the book and shoved it in my hand. The doors opened and she ran toward the platform, beige raincoat floating after her. As backyard sped by the windows of the train, I inspected what she had given me, an old bookmark. It was made of parchment that had acquired its edges with time instead of by any process of manufacturing. Handwritten in Gothic calligraphy with faded ink, it read, "The Amazing Tales of a Woman Named Mabel Jenks." Below that, "Timeless Book Fins." At the bottom, in pencil, corner of Roscoe and Claremont. A week later, while replacing the wallet in my back pocket, my fingers bumped into the forgotten piece of parchment that the mysterious woman had handed me. As I was leaving a restaurant on Roscoe, the spring breeze encouraged me to take the 5-block walk. Looking for some sort of bookstore, I was not ready for what I found. Of the 4 buildings at that corner, only one had retail windows. The occupant treated them as walls since they were covered inside with gray construction material that had accumulated a coat of dust. I shaded my eyes to see hanging from a string the cut-out bottom of a shoebox with the words "Timeless Book Fins" written in black crayon. I knocked on the glass. It shook under my knuckles. A short woman with small reptilian features opened the door and looked me up and down. She let her gaze pose the question as to what I wanted with her. Behind her I saw rows of dusty books crisscrossed by streams of gray light. I told her I wanted to buy the Tales of Mabel somebody. Her small hands snatched my parchment with surprising speed, and she walked inside. I went in, gingerly walking on shag carpeting that desperately held on to its greenness. I looked around and noticed dozens of bookshelves holding row after row of books of similar dimension and material. All titles were handwritten in the same faded ink and in the same lettering style as my parchment. Running a finger over several brittle spines of the pale beige color of untreated leather, I read The Amazing Tales of A. Each one finished with a different name. I took one out to see what it said about these people that was so fascinating. Just as I was about to unfold the creaky cover, the small woman walked toward me with a petulant shake of her shoulders, snatched the book from my hands, sighed loudly, put it back where it belonged, asked what my name was, and ordered me to wait for her by the front. I walked to an empty glass counter bearing layers of dust over a coat of yellow fingerprints. A minute later, she came back with a book similar to all the others, but with my name on it. She dropped it on the counter with a sigh and asked for $500. Of course, I protested and demanded to be told why she charged such an exorbitant amount. Her reddish-brown eyes, unmoved and void of any sign of life, aimed at mine. Mesmerized and chilled down to my lower spine, I chuckled, perhaps because I wanted at least one of us to have a human reaction. After verifying that that was indeed my name on the spine, she told me she took Visa and MasterCard. Perhaps because I had seen the emotions that the book provoked in the L woman, or perhaps because I don't know the value of money, as my dad would often tell me, I took out my credit card. Leaving the bookstore, I took a step back into the reality of traffic, Sunday walkers, and my life as it was until a few minutes ago. Scared of what I would find in an old book purporting to know about me, I couldn't bring myself to open it until I sat at my kitchen table. The book's brittle, delicate sheets had been bleached by at least a couple of centuries of existence. A corner broke off when I flipped the first page. Entirely handwritten in angular cursive, it began. Born the son of Francis and Amanda, I ever honor and praise them for their worthiness. For though he was a perfect gentleman, and she a lady of grace and cheer manner, they wonderly deliver with great strength to born and to rise me to serve the world in a land far away. I was born little and not too serviceable, and sick every fortnight. A doctor of physique was of my town. With druggers and lecheries, this worthy man, clad in white and named Mortenot, gave his patient 2 steps ahead of death. I closed the book. How could it know my parents' names, or even my doctor's? I stood up and walked to the window, in part to verify that the world was still moving normally, and in part to put distance between me and that old artifact I couldn't bring myself to call a book. How could someone guess my genealogy before it had happened, before the invention of the printing press? Mom believes that our destiny is written in the stars, but they turn out to be billion-year-old photons coming from distant suns that may no longer exist. Dad quotes Kant that reality is like a fisherman's net. We only see what is caught in it. What doesn't get caught is our ignorance. Of course, soon I was back taking in the tight handwriting of this obviously very old story. It read, "When I was little child, lone from everyone, as I had no brother, my only delight was to be alone except for my fancied friend. Of name Syl, the lad has wisdom and chivalry not surpassed as we Roman play the city of my mind." No one in my life knew about the imaginary friend of my childhood. I had even confessed to my adult self that I had used my imagination to provide for my companionship. Interrupted only by feverish walks to my darkened window, I spent most of that night reading the very old story of my life until, at dawn, I found a bookmark made of parchment where my future began, and the disappointingly few pages left until its end. The wan noises of the awakening day brought my attention to my present life, lived, as it turned out to be, by the book. A book with the answers of my past and my apparently predictable future. Back at the window, the glowing red city urged me to don my schedule harness and follow the rest of the ants to the hill. Were there a few pages left after the bookmark because my future was dull, repetitive, or simply short? Would reading my future allow me to change it, or would I be a slave to the handwritten story and those pages left until my inevitable end? Would the end of the book coincide with my own? I pick up this odd artifact with the intention of dumping it in the trash to negate its power, while making the instant decision to plow my own destiny. One side of my brain, machine gun resolutions to eat healthier, lift weights, read all of Sartre because he talked about existence, start my own business, ask Sabitha on a date, go on a cleanse, get out of this going nowhere job. But halfway through my kitchen, I decided to read just a few lines ahead. I read, "A worthy night, I live in a great city, in search of a woman who knew my heart, a woman fit for any yeoman to wed. On the month of June, the time came to fall of joy and bliss. Miranda joins me in the tavern of Julnar. We are as bright as any day." Since the book had me falling for this woman, I decided to skip to the very end. His wife Miranda, weeping with piteous heart, hold this worthy man of great honor in her arms, cries to the Lord, "We living a short felicite. Lord, choose another lad to take, but not." The implacable walls of this ditch in which I found myself only allow me to see ahead or behind. Even if there was a woman who could hold company with Venus in my path, there was only one way out of my apparently short destiny: to avoid meeting Miranda. I threw the book in the trash, and I went to the bathroom to shower and got ready to climb up from this ditch, to allow myself to find my own way and to never, ever meet this Miranda woman. With my future on my mind, I rode the morning L. I jammed myself into a train car filled with dozens of destinies that, like a plate of spaghetti, each follow a different direction, one on top of another or coil in on themselves. As I bounce along with my fellow itinerants, a dose of everydayness rushed my system. Like me, they had bosses and subordinates, schedules and deadlines. Why would I be different? Could this be a scam? The only person who could answer to the authenticity of the manuscript was the little book peddler on Roscoe Street. Instead of going downtown to work, I got off the train at the Polina stop and power walked to the bookstore. In place of the timeless book fins was a swanky children's clothing store. I walked down the pristine main aisle, lined with rows of little pastel garments and displays of multicolored toys, until I reached a long-haired, malnourished attendant who, after a polite greeting, assured me that store had been there for at least 2 years. Back on the street, hands in my pocket, I walked because my body needed a physical activity. Adrift with no map, no north or destination, I didn't know where to go to restart my life. I stopped my ambling, leaned on a lamppost, and brought myself to think. The book began with a mention of my parents and my doctor. Not a matter for texting, I called Mom and Dad's number. "Will, what happened? You okay?" "You remember how old I was when we came here to this country?" There was a silence that I interpreted as her pointing to the fact that I had not said hello. "Do I remember? Of course. Why? Do you want to go back to Argentina?" "Mom, you used to have some sense of humor." She paused. I heard her drink something, then came back to the phone. "You were 2.5. I understood that to get more information out of my parents, it would take more than a phone call. "Are you decent?" "You lost your job? Frankie, Will is coming over." The L dropped me a few blocks from the old house on Walcott Street. I walked the blocks of my past, the train line to the suburbs where I used to put pennies on the tracks and face my fear of being close to the heavy monster roaring by. The smell of the Chinese restaurant where I took my first real date, Julia, my introduction to adulthood. Walking on the newly finished sidewalks, bereft of chalk home bases or hopscotches, I realized I hadn't moved that far. Mom must have been waiting for me, for she opened the door and came out to greet her only son. It had been a while since I'd seen her, and she felt small in my arms. Dad smiled with his eyes, but otherwise restrained his enthusiasm. I was walked to the kitchen. They never used the plastic-covered living room furniture or the darkened dining room. I was offered tea, coffee, cookies that my dad should not eat by dusk anyway. When they stopped fussing, I told them of the book. Their names being mentioned, the circumstances of our arrival, all of it. When I finished, they both stared at me in silence. "We meant to tell you a long time ago." Mom made a dramatic pause. "I guess this is as good a time as any. You're really the son of aliens. We adopted you when your vessel crashed and—" "Mom, it's not funny." "To you." She got up to make coffee. "It was a little funny." Dad wanted to score points with his wife, but he had that look that he gets when he's about to say something important. "Well, you and I need to talk. It says I'll fall in love with a girl named Miranda." Mom dropped the cup in the sink. "I know her. She's a good person. Are you going to call her?" "Mom, no. In fact, I'm canceling my date with her. I didn't tell him my life depended on avoiding this woman." Dad picked up a couple of books to make room on the table. "We were invited to their house. She's a looker." I heard Mom whisper, "It would be nice to have grandchildren." "We both want that." Dad stood up. "Will, you and I need to talk, just the two of us." "Wait a minute, why just—" Mom's face turned red. Dad pointed a finger at her nose. "Remember that night in Montevideo? We agreed to not—" "Remember?" She nodded and turned around to give us her back. It was unusual for her to concede in any fight, particularly one with Dad. With a gesture, he invited me to the living room. He didn't turn the light on. He just sat at the farthest corner of the couch and patted the seat next to him. "Do you know why you're named William and not Guillermo?" I shook my head no. Dad lowered his head and cleared his throat. "It was written in my book that we would come here to the States, and I thought that naming you Guillermo would hamper you in here." I felt my blood draining. I was paralyzed, but I managed to utter, "What book?" Until today, I didn't know how accurate my book would be. "Yes, I ran into a book like yours. Mine was in old Spanish." "How can it be that all this has been written by hand, obviously before the printing press?" Dad's eyes, staring at the plastic covers, looked just like mine, only after many years of trouble. He cleared his throat again. "Listen, hijo, my conclusion is that all our destinies are written down. We are mere actors following a script written long ago, like you said, before the printing press. I think whoever wrote it, that it included you." I felt imprisoned by invisible bars that had taken all control of my hands. I ran out of the house because running gave me the sense I was doing something on my own. As I turned the corner, I bumped someone's grocery bag. "Hey, look where you're going," she said. Sorry, I couldn't utter another word. Her cascading curls framed a face that made me feel seen. Her cinnamon eyes opened a portal into her beautiful, sweet soul. Her lips spoke as if kissing the air in front of them, and the air was thankful for her breath. "Are you Will? You look just like your dad." Yes," I hated my sudden lack of inspiration. "I'm Miranda."